Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're embarking on a deep dive into some incredibly complex and, well, frankly, quite disturbing source material.
Yeah, it is. We've got a single personal account here from someone who identifies as a targeted individual.
And our mission, just to be really clear up front, is to carefully lay out the claims in this account.
Exactly. We'll detail the alleged methods, the claimed perpetrators, the experiences described, sticking strictly to what the speaker tells us in this source, nothing more.
Right. Now, the speaker mentions their background is in particle physics and systems analysis.
Important point, though. They explicitly say they are not a weapons expert
Mm,
or a neuroscientist or a radio engineer. They're very clear about that.
good to know. And the core claim, it's pretty alarming.
It really is. They allege systematic physical mutilation and torture happening, they say, inside their own home using sophisticated technology.
And they attribute this directly to intelligence agencies.
That's the claim.
So, just to reiterate, our focus today is purely on understanding what this person claims is happening and how they believe it's being done, based only on what's in this account.
We're presenting the content.
Hmm.
We're not adding anything, not verifying, not taking sides on these, very serious claims.
Think of us as guides, just walking you through what this one specific source describes.
Okay, let's start with the nature of these alleged attacks. How severe are they, according to the speaker?
Well, the description is intense. They talk about being mutilated all day, shot into nonstop, feeling like they're being tortured to death in their own home. Stark language.
Yeah, very. And they list specific body parts they claim are targeted with what they call pulsed microwave energy.
Like what?
Face, specifically teeth and nose,
Hmm.
head, eyes, genitals, breasts, lungs, spine, kidney. I mean, it's a really detailed list of alleged targets, quite granular.
Wow. And the experiences themselves, what do they describe feeling?
Pain, primarily. They talk about burning skin, say, around the nose.
Hmm.
Pain deep inside organs, lungs, breast, kidney are mentioned.
Deep inside.
That's what they say. Also, things like forced sneezing. They speculate maybe it's implants triggering a nerve or maybe microwaves hitting the nose area directly. Just speculation on their part, though.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah. They mention an arm vibrating so badly they collapse in pain,
Right.
waking up feeling damaged like every morning.
So it sounds constant or near constant?
Sometimes described as nonstop, yeah.
Yeah.
Other times they mention specific timings, like maybe shift changes around 7 p.m. or attacks timed precisely when they try to work or sleep. It suggests a pattern, at least in their perception.
Right. It paints a picture of relentless, targeted physical distress, according to this account.
Definitely.
So, given all that, how do they think this is technically possible? What's the alleged mechanism, the technology?
Okay, so the core physical principle they put forward, and they claim this is verifiable, is that microwave frequencies can pass through walls.
Through brick and concrete.
That's the claim. Much like laser light goes through glass, they use an analogy of milky glass, some intensity is lost, but it gets through.
Huh. And do they have numbers on that?
They try to quantify it, suggesting maybe 50% intensity gets through a brick wall, but pretty much 100% through glass windows.
And the idea is if you lose intensity going through a wall.
You just double the power at the source. That's their analysis anyway, to compensate.
What about the tools? What kind of devices do they imagine are being used?
They describe focused microwave beams, sometimes called collimated beams, and the emitters, the devices themselves, claim to be small, portable,
How small?
like little black boxes or panels, maybe the size of a small suitcase or a telescope. Easily placed anywhere, they suggest a neighbor's house, a car, even a handbag,
So the idea is you could position these things around a property.
and cover the whole house volume. That's the concept they lay out.
Okay, now this next part is, well, quite specific in their account. Targeting inside the body. How do they explain that?
Right, this is key to their explanation. They believe precise targeting within the body is done using two beams that overcross or intersect.
Two beams intersecting.
Yeah, they even provided a sort of diagram, a top-down view. The idea is where the beams cross, the intensity is much higher.
So you move the crossing point.
And you can essentially scan inside the body, causing pain wherever that intersection point is. Much more intense there than along the path of a single beam. That's their very specific technical claim.
I see. And this works even through multiple walls.
They address that too. Say, going through two walls might drop the intensity down to 25%. But again, they claim you could just boost the source power even more to compensate.
What about distance? Can these beams really be precise from, say, 50 or 100 meters away?
The speaker claims yes. They attribute this to modern steering software, stable ways to mount the emitters, and maybe techniques like laser mapping for correction. That's their understanding of the potential tech.
Okay. And they also mentioned something about a learning algorithm.
Yes, this is interesting. They suspect their own body is being used as a sort of target dummy to calibrate the system.
How?
Well, they noticed that initially, the intensity of the alleged attacks seemed to vary depending on where they were in the house near windows, in hallways near doors.
Uh-huh.
But later, they claim, the targeting became much more consistent, regardless of location, which to them implied the system had learned the layout and how to compensate. Calibration, basically.
So learning by doing, essentially.
That's the interpretation. They do mention radar mapping for 3D floor plans as another possibility, but they lean toward the learning algorithm based on their own experience of those changing intensities.
And they connect this to computers.
Yes, they observe what they see as computer steering. They describe alleged attacks coinciding with computer hacking incidents, claiming hack attack and assaults every 60 seconds at times. And even that, the system seems set to shoot them while they slept.
Okay, so faced with all this claimed technological assault, did they try to defend themselves? Shielding.
Yeah, they talk about using aluminum foil, just normal baking foil.
Foil. Did it work, according to them?
Well, here's what they found, as they describe it. A single sheet. Not really enough to stop what they felt as deep internal pain.
What?
But wrapping themselves completely in several layers, 3 or 4 layers thick, they claim that did block the beam and stop the internal pain.
Interesting. And that led them to a conclusion.
Yes, about where the attacks were coming from. Because wrapping horizontally work, they figured the beams weren't coming from above, like satellites or something.
But from the sides.
Horizontally, yeah.
Okay.
From emitters they believe are placed around the property at ground level or similar.
Makes sense based on their foil experiment. But shielding sounds tricky.
Extremely. They point out, blocking windows doesn't help much if the beams go through walls anyway.
Right.
And covering all your external walls is a huge task. Plus, they mention a potential problem. If you don't cover it perfectly, any holes could create what they call a cabinet of mirrors effect. Beams bouncing around inside.
Wow. Okay, so let's shift gears. Who does the speaker claim is actually doing this? The perpetrators, and why?
According to this source, the blame is placed squarely on intelligence agencies in the Western world.
Any specific ones mentioned?
They name the UK's MI5 and also agencies in Germany and Switzerland, describing them as effectively working together like one organization or one agency, despite maybe having different official roles.
And the people involved, the agents carrying this out.
The language used is extremely harsh. They're described as serial killers, psychopaths, degenerate, people working for these agencies, according to the claim.
That's quite an accusation. What about the motive? Why would agencies or people within them allegedly do this?
This is maybe the most disturbing part of the claim. The speaker insists the motivation is not national security. Not at all.
Then what?
They claim it's driven by, quote, sexual arousal, sexual sadism, sexual violence, essentially deriving pleasure from humiliating and mutilating vulnerable people. That's the alleged motive.
That's a profoundly dark claim.
It is. And they make a comparison, likening the alleged situation to an Auschwitz sort of setup, citing perceived humiliation tactics, like being targeted specifically when naked.
So they're explicitly calling the alleged perpetrators.
Sexually driven clinical psychopaths and serial killers.
Yes.
Those are the terms used in the source.
And based on these beliefs, they list potential crimes.
Yes. Dereliction of duty, treason, even high treason for agency heads, war crimes against one's own population, crimes against humanity, premeditated murder. It's a heavy list.
And they compare it to historical events.
They draw a parallel to the Nazis, actually claiming the current alleged situation is worse because, in their view, it's happening publicly, just unrecognized.
Okay, so who does this account claim are the typical targets of this alleged activity?
They list several groups they believe are targeted. Disabled people, people in care homes, children, single mothers, young mothers, single women generally. Men too, yes. Sometimes mentioned in the context of being business competitors, other times simply because they're seen as exposed, vulnerable, or isolated. The claim of sexual violence is also made against male targets.
Right. So let's try to just recap the core argument here as presented in this source.
Okay. The main point the speaker is trying to get across is their belief that intelligence agencies are actively using these microwave weapons.
Weapons that they claim can pass through walls.
Exactly. to deliberately mutilate and torture ordinary, innocent people to death inside their own homes.
And the reason this can supposedly happen, according to the speaker, is because the public just isn't aware that this kind of through-wall technology allegedly exists or works this way.
That's the essence of their argument, that secrecy and public ignorance are key enablers.
Okay. So this has been a deep dive strictly into one single and deeply unsettling personal account.
Yeah, we've really focused exclusively on presenting the claims, the reasoning, the alleged experiences as laid out by the speaker in this particular source material.
Detailing the alleged attacks, the technology they believe is involved, and their perspective on who they think is responsible and why. No outside info, just the account itself.
So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, to consider, drawing directly from the themes in this account.
Based purely on what this speaker claims, what are the implications if our homes, our private spaces, could no longer be seen as truly safe havens from external, technologically advanced physical threats?
Something to think about.
Thank you for joining us and engaging with this complex deep dive.